Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Racing the Races. So we've got the new handicap marks out, and I want to talk about some on the flat, over hurdles and over fences, and we're starting this video over fences. And the first horse I want to talk about is Kitty's Light. Now, if you actually look at the handicap marks on the BHA website, it suggests that Kitty's Light has gone up £1 to 147, which is true, but it's actually £7, £8 higher. £7, sorry. £7 higher than when winning the Scottish National, because he didn't carry a penalty in the Bet365 Gold Cup. So he ran off his same mark of 140. So he's actually up £7. For some reason in my tweet I've put Kitty's Light is up £8. It's £7. My maths was terrible there, wasn't it? I mean, 140 plus... What's the difference between 147 and 140? And I've made it 8. Don't know why. Anyway, so it's gone up £7 in total from the two wins. The handicap marks suggest it's £1, but it's £7 from the Scottish National and £7 from the Bet365 Gold Cup. For me, not enough. Not enough. I honestly believe Kitty's Light, still believe it, is a 150 plus horse. That means... still got £3 or £4 before getting to the 150 mile, or £3 before he gets to 150. I think he's improved. I think he wants all of this stamina. You know, he loves long distance races. To win an Ida, a Scottish National, and a Bet365 Gold Cup in a season is amazing. I think the back end or the beginning of last season, they kind of got it a bit wrong, finishing second at Chepstow and then second in a Charlie Hall. But it's all come good now. They've got it back to... they got him back down to a good mark. And then he went and won 3 races. He actually won all 3. We advised him in all 3 races, which was good. And, yeah, I honestly think that there's only one thing left for him. He's won a Scottish National. He's won a Bet365 Gold Cup. He's won an Ida Chase. Winning a Welsh National is very similar to winning a Scottish National. There's no extra prestige. There's no... It's like on par with winning a Scottish National. For me, there's only one more thing this horse should be aimed at. That's the Grand National. Currently available at 25 to 1. I actually don't think that's a bad price. I hope that's where they target him next year. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw him towards the beginning of the season running over 3 mile. Potentially dropping. You know, if he dropped down to, say, 144, turned up in the Grand National of 144... I'd be very, very confident of a huge run. I think he would just about get in off 144. And yeah, if he jumps those fences, I think he would go very, very, very close. I hope they give him a run over the beach in the Beach Chase. Get him used to the fences. See if that's the right thing for him. If it's not, then they can go back for another Scottish National if things don't work in the Beach Chase. But he's definitely one to not, you know, drop out your nag me now that he's won 3 on the trot. I still think he's nicely handicapped. The second horse I want to talk about is a horse called Phlegmatic, who dropped £1 to 139 after finishing 6th in Ireland. Now, the Irish horses, we know how well handicapped they are, and Phlegmatic's probably ran a really good race to finish 6th, and I think he's probably ran to par what he did at Kempton. Now, obviously, he finished 2nd at Kempton, behind Our Power. In a lucrative race. His Coral Trophy is a really good race to win. It's 85 grand to the winner. And I think they will target that next season. So he got beat off 136 this year. Or 135 actually. He got beat off 135. I think if they get him back to around the 135 mark come February, he's one that's very interesting. So again, he's one that maybe at the beginning of the season, he might not be... I say beginning of the season. The National Hunt season actually starts at the week. Well, it started yesterday, didn't it, I think. But the first jump racing is Mutoxter, I think, on Saturday. But I think, you know, when the National Hunt season kicks back off properly in September, October, this horse may not be the one to get on straight away. And I wonder whether they just target the February, March races again, like they seem to have done here. As you can see, 2022, he had 2 wins, and he also had a 2nd in 2023 in February. I think that might be what they try again this year, with that race, or next year it'll be now, won't it? With that race in mind at Kempton. So he's won for next season, but maybe the end of next season. The next horse I want to talk about is a horse that I do think is for the start of next season, and that's Riders on the Storm. He's dropped down to a mark of 133 after some indifferent runs, and yet he actually ran okay last time when he was second. It wasn't the worst effort, and yet the handicapper dropped him another £2 to 133, which I think was very kind, really. And I think he'll go back for the race at Aintree. He won it this year, beating Hitman and Garlaw. Obviously, Garlaw has franked that form. Hitman's done alright since. Riders on the Storm was a good horse, and I put in my tweet, his form at Aintree over this course and distance actually reads first, second, first, nowhere. So the nowhere was this run here in December when he come back for a big handicap. It didn't quite work, but yeah, I think back for the old roan chaser for £3 lower mark. Surely that's where they start Riders on the Storm next season, and he's got to go close if he turns up. The next horse I want to talk about is T Clipper, who dropped £3 to 142, and do you know what? I think he's getting very, very well handicapped without actually doing anything wrong. He finished 6th in an old teamer, a really good old teamer. That's the Ascot chase. This is the old teamer. He finished 6th in this race. If we look in front, the Goffer's done alright. I think he finished 4th in the Bet365 Gold Cup. Fast or Slow's come out and won a Irish Gold Cup, or whatever that race was that he beat Gallop and Deschamps. And Correct Rambler's won a Grand National. It was a good race. We've got to keep an eye out for Monbeg Genius as well, wherever he goes. But T Clipper did nothing wrong back in 6th. Just found too many horses too well handicapped. And the same thing happened at the weekend in the Bet365 Gold Cup. He actually came into the race and moved into it quite nicely, but didn't get home over the 3.5 mile trip. When he drops back to 3 mile, off his now 142 mark, I think he's going to run a couple of really big races again next season. He finished 3rd in this race at Ascot back in October. That came off 145. So he's down to 142. So he's £3 lower than when he wasn't beaten that far. At Ascot, he was beaten 2.5 lengths by Our Power and Downey Kerwin. Went off the 5-1 favourite that day as well. So he could definitely be aimed potentially at that, or back at the old teamer. Personally, I think they'll aim him at the London Gold Cup, the Ascot first. If all goes well, then they just keep running him in all sorts of races. If it doesn't work, then they might target him for the old teamer to try and turn up off, I don't know, say 138 maybe. If they turned off 138 in the old teamer, I think it would go very, very close. You know, he ran this year off 147. A £9 lower mark would be very interesting. So he's almost like, for me, I think he could be a beginning of the season horse and then an end of the season horse, but nothing in the middle, because I think they might, if it doesn't work coming to this race at Ascot, they'll then save him for the old teamer. The final horse I want to talk about over fences is a horse called Rouge Vif, who has dropped another £5 to 129. Now, he is incredibly well handicapped. He's so well handicapped, this horse. This time last season, he ran at Newton Abbot in a race of 149. He's now rated 129. He's £20 lower, and he's actually even more than that lower than what he'd been at his best. He was rated 164 at his best. He's unbelievably well handicapped. Personally, for me this year, he's been really poorly campaigned. Hurdles didn't work. They then went to Doncaster, where he didn't run too bad, but that's the only race, in my opinion, that he's had conditions, he's had the right type of race for him to run a good race. And to be fair, you know, horses in front of him included Malistic. That is how you say that, isn't it? Malistic, who's obviously come out and won at Ayr off 147, was winning that off 145, and has won a big handicap at Ayr off 147. Also in front of him was a horse called Before Midnight, who has run well in multiple races, and is one that I'm quite keen on at the beginning of next season at Ascot. There's a couple of races of him at Ascot for Before Midnight. I mean, that came off a mark of 140, and he was only beaten 8 lengths. He's £11 lower already. Harry Whittington's retiring or giving up training horses, So wherever he goes, somebody's going to get a really well handicapped horse there. And surely they've got to try and sneak him into this handicap at the beginning of the season at Cheltenham. So he won this handicap back in 2020. He won it by 7.5 lengths off a mark of 156. What was his next run at Cheltenham in a handicap since then? Since 2020. 156. When was his next handicap run at Cheltenham in a handicap? Yeah, I've just said that. He hasn't had one. Well, he has, but it was over hurdles, and he hated that. He's not a hurdler. You know, he was well beaten at Huntington just before that. He came to Cheltenham and he just doesn't like hurdles. I never understand why trainers and owners don't look at races and go, do you know what? We won that so impressively. We're now £9 lower. Let's go and win it again. And they just kept running him for me in completely the wrong races. And yeah, whoever picks up Rouge Vif is going to have a really, really well handicapped horse. So there's a few horses there for next season. Kitty's Light, I think, will be aimed at the Grand National, hopefully via the Beach of Chase. Phlegmatic, I think, will be aimed at Kempton, a return for where he finished second this year. Riders on the Storm at the beginning of the season, I think there's that he'll go back for the old roan. He's got good form at Aintree. T-Clipper, I think there's 2 races they'll aim him at, and the season will start with a good aim, being the Ascot race, and it will end with a good aim, being the Old Teamer. In between those, I wouldn't be as keen to follow him, to be honest. And Rouge Vif, whoever picks him up is going to have a very, very well handicapped horse on their hands.